there's a story in every bottle.
Live right now.
We're live.
Yeah, you're going live.
It's
We're all
Monday
live.
again, and we're all together
We're
again.
alive and a live.
Cheers.
It seems like it's been hard to do this summer. We're all
Cheers,
in the
everyone.
same place. Cheers.
I know we're all running around
Every which way.
every which way.
Yeah.
Everybody's running everywhere.
Everybody is.
I just got back from a trip down to Atlanta, and it was packed with people everywhere. Everywhere.
And you just got
All
back
over.
from.
Yeah, all over the place. Chicago, San Francisco.
And it was busy everywhere, wasn't it?
And I feel like it was busy enough here that I don't know if I even realized that Ken was gone for several days.
Yeah.
I just got back from.
I saw
I
Marie
didn't go anywhere.
and I was telling her, she goes, "Oh, I didn't know you were gone." Because she's been so busy running around too.
So cheers, everybody.
Cheers, everybody.
Yep. Cheers.
Welcome to Monday Night Live.
It's Monday Night Live.
Monday Night Live.
And just to get the business out of the way, this time under Ken,
Do we start
right
recording?
under you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Subscribe.
Oh, there you go.
YouTube
That's
channel
better, yeah.
subscribe.
Right here, everybody.
Right there.
Right here.
And
Come on,
Facebook
subscribe.
subscribers, subscribe to the little bell. You'll subscribe to our channel that way. It's fun. If you subscribe to Facebook Live or the YouTube channel, every time we go live, which you never know when that might be, you'll get a notification and you'll be able to join us and whatever activity we're engaged in. I think we were riding. We certainly every Monday we're going to go live, but then we were riding our triple a couple weeks ago. We may be live on a sailboat. We may be live on a motorcycle track at some
We'll be on a
point.
racetrack
I think
next
that's,
Monday.
I think that's next
Next
week.
Monday,
Yeah.
we'll be
Not
on a
sure
racetrack
how-
at 5:30.
Wow!
Not sure how that's gonna
Wow!
work.
I'm not sure how that's going to
Say,
work
am I off?
either.
Am I off next week?
Yeah, no, I don't know.
We'll have to talk about this.
So anyway, subscribe to our channels and you'll get to see the craziness live. And if you are joining us today, thank you. And please like our broadcast if you like what we're talking about, and share it with your friends and family if you think they might be interested in the conversation that we're having. And if you are joining us, let us know by putting your name in the comments so we know you're here. And if you have any questions, ask those questions and we will answer them live on the show if we can. And
people can see it even after it's happened, right? Later on?
every show we've ever produced is on our website. If you go to under the event tab, there's the Facebook Live events.
And you can click on it.
And there's
scroll
literally over 100 videos that we've created since
So you can go
we
back
started.
and see a sailboat episode or
You can
a
go back
skiing
and
episode or a triple episode.
Actually, no, that's just the Monday Night Live. You can go back and see those. There are YouTube videos, all the YouTube Live videos.
No, it wasn't. That wasn't Monday Night Live. We were skiing, remember, at Gunstock.
At least
Oh,
we
yeah,
raced
yeah,
the
yeah,
chairlift
yeah, yeah,
down so we
that's
could
there.
go live.
It's all there.
I'm not making it up.
It's all up there.
We actually did it.
Even if we can't remember what we did it, and it's there.
We did do it.
So what are we doing today? Ken, tell me, because this is exciting to me.
Yeah, this is kind of a fun lineup, and I. It's not exactly a vertical tasting where we're going through different vintages of the same wine, but it's a little bit like that, and it gives you hopefully a little deeper understanding of how we craft the wines that we do here at Hermit Woods, and why we're pushing tendencies and techniques and approaches to try to craft a nicer wine. And what we're doing, what we're sipping on right now that we've jumped into the middle of actually is the 2019 Lakehouse White. So this is what we're currently serving and drinking here at Hermit Woods. And so this is a wine that's had a long history. It started in some regard prior to us even thinking we were going to have a winery. And Chuck, I'm sure you still have a visual of that tall blue bucket of rose hips down in my cellar back in 2009 or something like that. You and Bob and I were making wine, and I started messing around with what was growing nearby, and Greg
From
Mee
Greg Mee, yeah.
turned me on to rose hips that he was
Yeah.
growing.
Yeah.
You know,
And-
it's interesting. As you're telling this story, it dawns on me that I have a pretty deep connection with every single wine that we have. And I remember this wine as sort of coming out of left field for me. I wasn't as connected. You had made some connections with Greg, and you had been working on this project.
I think you really got connected right here, and I'll tell you why. But carry on.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the very beginning, you came up with these really interesting, cool wines, White Face, and
Yeah, we're going to start with Whiteface,
Yeah.
actually. Exactly.
And I remember being intrigued by them and really thinking, wow, this is really cool. But I don't have that connection like I do with other wines where I was part of, harvesting the apples or tripping over the blueberries or whatever it was that sort of stumbled us into this new project. You were sort of off in your mad scientist world, crafting, tinkering with things. Yeah. And that's where this came from.
So today we're going to sort of take some broad strokes through a lineup of Lakehouse White. We've been making it officially called Lakehouse White since 2013. So this is the first official vintage of
In my
Lakehouse White.
bedroom.
So that was still crafted at your house and served in your bedroom.
And served in your bedroom.
Actually, it was served here first because
the
this
first
was
time, 'cause it
crafted
was
in
released in
13,
14.
and that was released in 14. But the very first combination of the four key components for Lakehouse White, peaches, rose hips, rhubarb, and quince, happened in 2012 under the name of Whiteface.
All four of those things were in Whiteface.
Okay. There was another bottle of white wine that didn't have the quince, and I think it was called, we don't have it in the library anymore. I looked all over for it, and I can't even remember the name. It's not Round Pond because that was a flower
That was a
mead.
mead. Yeah.
That was a flower mead. But there was another one right here that had a different name that was just peaches, rhubarb, and rose hips, no quince.
Oh.
And Whiteface, I had added the quince. And I can't remember the name of it. I have it in my notes. I'll have to look it up. But
Yeah, that's a puzzle. 'Cause
Yeah.
I thought it was Lakehouse White and Whiteface, and I thought Whiteface was the one that had the missing component.
so Whiteface had quince. I don't know if we had a 2012 Lakehouse White. I have to look. I don't remember seeing that in the library.
It seems strange that you would have two wines with exactly the same four fruits. Well, no, I guess not.
Right.
They weren't
Popsicle.
exactly the same. They were two slightly different. I
Yeah.
remember that very distinctly.
There was
two slightly
quince or
different
no
wines.
quince.
Yeah.
But I don't think that other one was called
And
Lakehouse
I don't
White.
think it was called Lakehouse White either.
Yeah, there was some other
So-
name for it.
Yeah.
But then maybe this is a question that needs to happen between these two wines. But why did you change the name when you
I think
switched from Whiteface to Lakehouse
that's where the
White?
marketing department came in.
That's fair. Yeah.
That's where Whiteface didn't quite
Yeah, we were.
catch. It was a good story, but
We used to name, if we haven't told this story before, we probably have, but you might not have heard it, but we used to name all of our wines between Lancaster, Pennsylvania and New Hampshire.
way back.
Yeah, on the way back.
It was somehow, it ended up being that we were going to be in a car for 8 hours and we'd already been, filled our heads with all kinds of new technology and ideas at the conference, and we're coming back and we would just rattle off ideas for names. We just list the names of wines
It was
that
fun. Yep.
yeah.
No, okay, maybe no, one more. We try it.
And I think at least 80 or 90% of all of our wines were named sometime in the car between
Yeah.
Lancaster and here, or in a brewery that we might have stopped
Yeah,
at.
yeah, for sure.
That was always
Let's
on our
call it
to-do
Mad Elf. No, no.
But I do remember that distinct time in which we had these two wines and we were like, okay, we need to have it a single wine, and it got named Lakehouse White because we had
Would
Lakehouse
you do
Red.
the honors and open up the Whiteface right there?
Whiteface coming up.
So
Tell us about the fruit.
yeah, so I want to
in the early days.
I got two parallel themes here tonight. Before we've gone through some series of Lakehouse White, we're mostly comparing and contrasting the flavors, and here I want to dig a little deeper into how we got those different flavors. So I want to talk a little bit about how we assemble the wines, how they're aged and what goes into them. And then parallel to that, I also want to talk about the nature of the fruit, because the nature of the key components to this wine have changed over the years. So back in 2012, when this was assembled, we were getting local peaches from Autumn View Farm down in Plainsfield. And it's at 45 minutes south. And Bob
Very
Perkins has got a wonderful farm there with these peach trees. And I had reached out, I forget how I first connected with him, but he had rhubarb. So I was getting this really unique rhubarb from him.
I think you got the peaches before the rhubarb.
I think so too.
Yes,
I think.
and I remember that one mad time.
I don't know how I found the peaches.
We were scouring the farmers across New Hampshire.
I remember I missed
We had to go and pick them.
We had to go. That was the first year.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. He had the most amazing crop. In fact, he lost several trees because the crop was so heavy. It was cracking the branches.
That's right.
And dropping them off. And I remember picking. We would be out in the orchard. I was just mowing peaches. I'm not a big peach eater, but these were so good.
Yeah, they were great
Pick one,
peaches.
put it in the basket. Pick another. Oh, I better finish that.
Yeah.
They were great peaches, and he grows without using sprays and things like that. So you really got these tremendous fruit. Your friend came up from Connecticut or Rhode Island, a bike mechanic, writer, bicycle shop,
Yeah.
and he helped de-stone
Doug was here for that. Yeah.
peaches for this one, for the
Oh, that one.
2013.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
sure that's 2013 because they were at Bob's house and we were doing it in Bob's basement.
Yeah.
It
Was that when we
here.
had
I was
the
at Bob's
2x6 with the spike coming up? And
That's exactly what it was.
Oh my God, that's so much fun.
the peaches in the beginning were from Bob Perkins' place for these two vintages, but then his trees suffered from blights and other things, and we were also scaling up the size of our batches as people discovered the wines and enjoyed the wines. So I had to start finding other sources for peaches, and that's gone all over the place. One time going all the way to California, but a couple of years was Pennsylvania, and the 16 and the 20 vintages were from Pennsylvania, from the Amish.
it's hard here because
What about
peaches,
Apple?
climate-wise.
Apple Hill does peaches, but maybe not to the scale that you need.
They do pick your own, and I speak to Chuck all the time about raspberries, about peaches,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Ken, you can come and pick." I'm like,
He
okay.
doesn't want to do it.
So he doesn't want to
Well,
do that.
the other part is
but-
peaches are right on the fringe here, right?
Peaches are really
climate-wise.
difficult here. They're very susceptible to a late frost.
Right.
So some fruit trees, even though they start to set fruit or start to blossom anyway on a fruiting spur, open up their blossoms. If they have a frost, it doesn't hit them back that bad. But peaches, it really wipes them out. This year, crab apples got nailed by a late frost, and it's also a down year for crab apples.
Yep.
So it was a double whammy. Anyway, so the peaches varied. Bob Perkins, and then Pennsylvania. This vintage I'm really excited about, which we can't sample because I haven't made it yet. But I've got a whole new line of peaches going on that I think is going to amp Lakehouse White up a whole nother step.
Out of
because
Pennsylvania?
no, these are coming out of New Hampshire, right at Brookdale Farm.
Oh, cool.
So last year I experimented with white and yellow nectarines and donut peaches.
Oh, I remember we did
Yes.
one of our Facebook Lives months
We
ago.
sampled all those.
I don't know if we were talking about Lakehouse White or just the whites in general, and you were sharing with us some of the
That's
the
exactly right.
sort of work in progress from all those
last year I
fruits.
got to
Yeah.
experiment with a bunch of different stone fruits, and the donut peaches are just dynamite. So I'm working with Brookdale right now to get all the
More donuts?
for more donuts, and
You
that's,
never
the
have
donuts are going to replace the regular Pennsylvania peaches, which are excellent, but these are better.
So this
And
is
they're
a
local.
wonderful story.
And they're
because that's right, because we've talked all the time about the fact that we procure our fruit from as local a source as we can. And as you just described, sometimes we can't get them local. Sometimes the peaches aren't available or whatever it might be. So we go outside the state, then we go outside New England on occasion. And it's so wonderful when we can bring it back.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, try this. This is really
This is great.
awesome.
And that's from 2012.
12.
So yeah, the tough thing about this is
12.
that it's almost like you
So
wish you
it's-
could preserve what it tasted like when we first released it, because we kind of have to deal with the fact that it's changed over
It's
the past
changed in the
7
bottle.
years.
So even if you make the exact same wine, but they're separated by 4 years, they're going to taste different because one's been in the bottle 4 years
What's
longer.
amazing, this is 9 years old.
I know, and it's beautiful.
It is.
It's
made-
less aromatic than the 19. It doesn't have as much going on in the
Yeah.
in
Definitely
the
not.
I
glass.
noticed that.
It's
yeah.
more subdued.
Mhm.
The flavors are all there. It's beautifully silky smooth. All the acidity is still there. All the fruitiness is still there. It's really a
Who would
lovely.
have ever
It's a really
guessed
lovely.
you could lay down a wine made from peaches and rose hips
I know.
for 9 years?
I know.
I guess
Yeah.
you guys guessed.
It was a guess.
It was Marika, you're absolutely right. It's a total guess. I mean, I'm astonished every time when I go into these because I'm making this stuff up, trying to do what makes sense,
nice.
and it's really nice.
And it's interesting because a lot of people don't think of white wines as ageable even from grapes.
Right.
People think of red wines as something you lay down, but Burgundian white wines and some white wines out of Bordeaux will
Yeah.
lay down for 20 years.
Oh yeah,
And here you are making a New Hampshire wine from New Hampshire fruit,
we'll live
and
10
you're at
years.
9 years.
10 years, no problem.
Yeah,
10.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
That is-
No, and
that's really
this will
good.
keep going.
There's nothing
nothing
tapering
wrong with
off.
it.
Right.
There's nothing tapering off.
No,
at
it's
all.
beautiful.
Yeah.
How many more bottles of that we have? We're going to be able to
Not enough. Not enough.
What did noticing on the bottle, there's a QR code on the back. What did those QR codes, what purpose did those serve initially?
Bob worked on that.
Did it
for a
bring you to the
while.
website?
That was a marketing failure. So QR codes were not very, they took a long time to really, actually in the early days, they never really caught on.
Right.
And so we were experimenting because it's a good idea. And you could scan that, it would take you to the
Yep.
page on the website
Okay.
where you would learn all about that wine. But
Okay.
what I unfortunately learned is all of the locations where you could get free QR codes, shut them down after 12 months if you didn't pay.
Oh, yeah.
So all of a sudden we'd be scanning our QR code and it would go nowhere.
Dead.
Whoops.
So
So much for saving a little money on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Early days of marketing, but then it was okay because QR codes didn't take off. People didn't.
They sort of,
really
yeah,
use
come
them.
in, they've almost,
Not till recently.
They went away, and then the pandemic brought them back because
Yeah, 'cause
it
all
was
the- yeah.
touchless menu
Yep.
way to access them. So they've come back, and we'll see what their future is. And the other thing that has brought them back is you used to need a special app.
Oh, that's right. And
Yeah.
now it
Now-
just
yeah,
goes on
pretty
the
much
phone
on
Now
your
now.
just your
phone.
camera
Yeah.
takes a picture of it, and you go right where you want to go.
So this is the exact same ratio
No,
of components.
none of those time.
Before you go,
So that all changes.
That all
That's a
changes.
great question. Yeah.
before you go into that, I just want to know what was the transgression from in the early days in figuring out rose hips and rhubarb and quince and peach, and is there can you think in your head of a time when you started to think, wow, these need to be together in a wine?
especially because
How did that happen?
they're
It
all
was
pretty
right around. It was
obscure
right around
fruits,
this
too.
time. It was right around 2011, 2012. That's when I was formulating what ultimately became Lakehouse White, and it was like one of these light bulbs. And winemakers know this already. I just was discovering it, coming at it a different way. But Cabernet's got incredible tannic structure. Merlot has great dark fruit. You put them together and you have a complete, fantastic red wine. So people figured out that when you combine things, you get more than the individuals can do on their own. There's some grapes that do just fine on their own, but blends really enhance the characteristics. So I made a peach wine, and it was okay, smelled kind of peachy, but it wasn't that interesting. It wasn't that much there.
Right.
Made a rhubarb wine, tastes like rhubarb. It's got bright acidity, but it's kind of curious, but what would you do with that? You're not going to be drinking a lot of it. Quince, make a quince wine. Smells like fresh tennis balls. And you open it up, and it's bright acidity with some pretty good grippy, tannic sort of mouthfeel to it. And rose hips made this really aromatic, light, complex wine all on their own. But they're such a pain to harvest and to work with.
Did you even know that back then? Had you made a rosehip wine all by itself?
I did, in this blue tub
Yeah.
in my basement. It looked disgusting. Chuck was down there, all these white seeds floating around, and he's like, boy, you're going off the deep end, Cam.
Yeah.
Maybe you should stick with beer.
Yeah.
And I was scared too of what was in that blue tub. It didn't look good, and we were in the most unsanitary sort of situation you could be in.
Yeah.
So it was playing with these different flavors and recognizing that if I put a little of this and a little of that together, that it would make something that started to taste like a wine that I was used to drinking, a white wine. That's something with complexity, something with balance, something with an engaging aroma, engaging flavor, a good follow through. So that's how it went. And it was right here in the beginning, the 11, 12, 13 was when it was first starting to come together. But at that time, Bob, I was just putting whatever I got together. Right. So we picked a bunch of peaches. Maybe we got 150 pounds. We got some rhubarb. Maybe it was 15 pounds. We got some quince. We got some rose hips. Picked them. Some were a little unripe. Okay. And then you throw it all together and you ferment it. Oh, that's pretty good. Then I'll go next year. I'm like, there's a little bit too much quince in this for me. So the next year I'm like, well, maybe I should think about it a little bit better and choose my ratios a little bit. So 12 and 13, 14 and 15 were all working with what I could get. And then, okay, I got too much rhubarb. I made a separate rhubarb and came up with something to deal with that rhubarb. But I didn't really get into the control until 2016. We'll go there in a moment.
In the process do you actually do the combine and blend the fruit? Because I know it was some of the wines you'll make a wine out of each component and then blend, or sometimes you blend the fruit at the beginning. And
right. So up until this vintage in 2016, it was always done where I would collect the fruit when it came ripe and stick it in the freezer. Then I would, and quince was the latest, they would come in October. And then after the quince was in, then I would pull out, come up with some ratio that I wanted of the fruit, shove it all together, let it thaw, and ferment it. And I would get whatever I got. And let's try the 13, because that was the next derivative of using this same thing, but there was something in this at that young age now, different than what we're tasting now, that I said, okay, I need to tweak it a little bit. And
this
so I changed the ratios a little bit.
Lakehouse White.
And this became the official Lakehouse White.
And you got the exact ratios down there. 52% peach, 23% rhubarb, 13% quince, and 12% rosehip.
TTB required.
TTB.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, not this
I'm sure
vintage. Not this vintage. The previous
Depends on
vintage.
the mood of the TTB investigators.
because they don't require that on grape wine, right? Wasn't that
No, they
was
don't
part of it?
require.
Yeah.
Well, there's
Sometimes they
rules
do,
about that
sometimes,
too. Yeah.
and sometimes yes.
In this country, I don't think so, that it's required.
I've definitely
But
seen it on
in-
wines.
There
before,
are
but
quite a few people that do. You having trouble there, Chuck?
it's very squeaky cork.
Squeaky.
Last one came out
Yeah.
slowly, but it was very squeaky.
Well, this is we changed around with corks a lot too back then.
That's one of those.
One of the things that I've learned just staying on the fruit path here, that getting peaches from different
Going
places.
a good way.
Yeah.
Oh, that looks really bad. Hope the wine's still okay.
No, it's good from here to here.
Yeah. One of the most challenging things for me was to deal with rose hips and to understand rose hips. And rose hips are a plant that grows wild around here. They love growing down by the seashore, challenged ground environments. They can grow in sandy soil, stony soil, salty soils. They don't need much water. And there are a couple different places around this area where these rose hips grow really well. Look at the color, it's a little darker,
It's much darker.
more golden.
I remember, Ken, in the early days of this, you marking on a Google map all of the yards.
I still have all those.
and homes
I have elderberries and rose
places
hips.
where you talk to people about grabbing their rose hips on the way to work,
Yeah,
on your way
yeah.
home,
Yeah.
trip to the Sandwich Notch.
Sandwich Notch is a
And
great
we went up
place.
there one time on our bikes to pick
Yeah, we
that.
did.
We just
field.
both just went in the
Yeah,
last
but
few
I was
weeks to go
looking
check
at
it
the
out
rose
again.
hips up there.
Yeah.
They weren't ready yet.
This one smells very different.
So rose hips, Rosa rugosa, grow all over the place, and they are normally used for potpourri. People will dry them and put them in their homes. I'll make a little satchel and hang them in the closet. Some people will add them to a tea and get some of the rose-like flavors and acidity. But they're primarily harvested and used for vitamin C. So rose hips are full of ascorbic acid and a great source of vitamin C. And in fact, I think it is the key component that makes these wines survive.
Yeah, maybe so.
It's vitamin C. It's why they.
It's an antioxidant.
survive. It's
Does
an
it?
antioxidant.
Does that nutrient remain as we're drinking it?
What's that?
Are we getting a good dose of vitamin C while we drink
There's
it?
full of ascorbic acid in it, so yes, you are. It's just nutritious. I can say that, can't I?
No, you can't.
These statements have not been evaluated by the
can't write
FDA.
it. I
You
know
can
that.
say anything you want. But no,
Put a
we
disclaimer down quick.
yeah, no, we talked about this with the University
Wow,
of
this is different
Maryland. What's the guy's name? Ray Fiola, who's a scientist who studied
Joe
Fiola, who studied
University of Maryland.
this, and he had no qualms at all about saying that the preservation through fermentation of the vitamin C
Yes.
in wines is valid and true.
And he has the lab
And he's got the
to
data
back
for
it up.
Yeah.
He has the
We've
data
just
to back
never
it up.
tested our wines, so we can't make any
TGB
claims.
still says
No.
Well, they just have rules. That's just about bureaucratic rule following.
Right.
Or trying to.
Trying to. Like
Yeah.
I said, who depends on who's on ship that day.
Right. There it is.
So am I correct to say, because it seems to me from all of my memory that it was about a year or two ago that you made a batch of, after you really understood rosehip, you made a batch of rosehip wine that it blew me away. I mean, I remember this it was a year or two ago. I remember you coming up, just rosehip. You just tried, because you had always fermented everything together.
Right.
And this was, I think, one of the early times when you fermented just rose hips, other than the very first time that was that mess that you talked about.
Right.
But you had a much better understanding of rose
I had a
hips.
barrel of it. I had a whole barrel of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was really great.
and it was amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And we learned a lot from that.
Oh, yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
What that rose hip is giving off.
Yeah,
to
that
this
went
wine.
into I think the 2018 or the 2019. I think it was a 2019. But yeah, that was great, and we do have a rosehip mead that's going to be released real soon. The labels should be here tomorrow, so the wine's already bottled, ready to go. But rosehips for me have been this
Thorn.
thorn is a good word, Chuck. Thank you, because they're very spiny. It's a rose bush, and you get all scratched up when you're harvesting and all that. But
That's why I do the videography.
yeah, I like that. Last time we had the drone out there on the,
Yeah,
on the
absolutely.
beach. Yeah, that was fun.
I didn't get scratched
You know,
at all.
Bob's just flying toys and
I
they're
know.
picking down.
Club members really love to come and pick rose hips with us down there on the
Actually,
beach.
That's gotta be
That's
coming
always
up
up
soon.
Priscilla.
Yeah.
That's
When
right.
is
That's
when
really
is
great.
that?
Priscilla, yeah.
Priscilla came by
She didn't
there.
pick
in
it
August.
August.
In August. Okay.
She's gonna pick this year though.
So
what do you
this
think,
is
Aaron?
very different.
Less
This
quince.
is more acidic.
Oh, really? You find it more acidic?
I found it more acidic, sharper. It's not as round and smooth.
It doesn't have
as the other one.
the back end. The back end is sharper to me after it's gone, and it seems to have less fruit. It's less
I think
fruity.
it tastes a little appley.
Appley. It does have a little bit of an apple component to it.
Well, rose hips are in the apple family.
They are.
Isn't that interesting?
So this has less quince, if I remember correctly. That's kind of what I was shooting for. But it has a different balance, and it's quite frankly not as
It's not
nice
as complex.
as the 12.
No.
It's not the same.
No.
It's holding up fine.
Yeah.
It's
No.
just, although the cork was a little problematic.
Well, and the darker color suggests that this one is potentially starting to move beyond its peak.
It may be that, part of the problem I've had with some of these batches was getting enough rose hips. And early on, these first few vintages, I would go harvest and pick rose hips and then freeze them right away. And so I would have rose hips of variable ripeness. The rose hips they're greenish, they swell, they get to sort of a cherry tomato size, and then they start to turn red. And then after they turn red, they start to get sunburned and they turn sort of purplish, even black.
Yep.
And they sort of shrivel up. And then they're done. So I would look for the red ones and I would pick those. But a lot of the red ones are run red where the sun is hitting them, and their whole other half is green, and they're still rock hard. But I didn't really know that, and they were. The term is phenolically ripe or phenolically unripe, like these were. So they weren't fully ripe yet. It's like picking an apple that's turned red, but you bite into it. It's like, it's just, it's harsh, it's sour, it's not ripe yet. And the same thing happens with blackberries and with wine grapes. So the vintner needs to go through. This was a conversation with Gideon Beanstalk at his place when we were drinking Lakehouse White with him. And he asked me about how I crafted this wine, and I told him about how I was starting to learn to wait until the rose hips were a little bit soft, because I knew when I picked those and tasted them, the flesh tasted a lot better. And he goes, "You're doing exactly the right thing," because that's how he picks his Pinot Noir. He walks through his vineyard and he waits until it's got that full ripeness, then he picks it, and that's the key.
Which is tricky all along, because the moment from full ripeness to overripe.
Exactly.
Days.
It's a window.
Yeah.
And that window varies.
Yeah.
And what I figured out with
And
rose
it
hips,
varies more widely with rose hips than it does with, say, Pinot. Pinot would be probably more consistent.
I don't know, that grape ripening is really tricky because you have a cluster. And what little I know about viticulture, when you're growing grapes well, you're pruning, you're plucking leaves, you're giving the right environment so that the whole cluster comes almost ripe simultaneously.
Right.
But that's really tricky. Very typically, the very bottom ones are ripe, and the core top part of the cluster is still green, still unripe. But you got to pick when you got to pick. And so people pick, and then they get slightly unripe. So a really well-tended vineyard, well-established vines, you end up with these perfect clusters where just about everything is at the right ripeness. And then you harvest, and then you get beautiful wine.
And maybe if you harvested rose hips, or if you grew rose hips with that in mind, you might be able to achieve that in the way you grew them. But because you're picking them wild, you're picking.
So here's
some
my-
ripe.
And
Here's my-
rose hips don't grow in bunches either, so
No, that's right.
you don't need
You
to
get
worry
one
about
at a
that as
time.
much anyway.
So here's how I've come around that.
Right.
You've seen that table. So for the past 3 years, I don't deal with rose hips the same way. The past 3 years, I figured out how to get ripe rose hips. You go to the beach, you pick all the rose hips that look decent as fast as you can with as many people as you can to get as many rose hips as you can. And then you sit and you wait for a period of up to 5 days. And you go through the whole batch of rose hips every single day, and you grab those that are phenolically ripe, pluck off the sharp little spiky end and the little green part, and throw them in a freezer bag. It's real pain, but it's the only way to get really ripe roses.
So they do continue to ripen just a little bit
continue to
for a
ripen.
few days after you pick.
Just like a banana, you go and buy a banana at the store, you don't eat it right away because it's still kind of greenish. And if you like them with a lot of brown spots where you've got really heavy starch sugar conversion in the banana, you wait. If you like them in between, you peel that banana where you want, and that's.
But you got to watch.
It's really key to.
Yeah.
It's like making anything. It's really key to have that fruit right where you want it to get the end result.
Would it be possible to pick it at that rate?
You'd have to pick every day.
Everybody who was picking
Pick every day?
No, but if you're picking from a huge, vast quantity of rose hips, if you only pick those that were perfectly ripe, would that make a difference? Is that possible?
So what I did in 16 and 17 was we would meet with all of our friends and Lori and various people out there, and I would go over and I said, look, work down the row here and pick all those that are bright red, that are soft but aren't rotted. Those go in your bag. Don't go back. Don't keep going. You've got to keep moving down the row. The problem is our vision is always referential. So if you stand in one patch and you pick all the bright red ones, and you go on and you come back there, you go, oh, there's some ones that are more red than the rest, and you pick those. You go away and you come back, oh, there's some that are more red than the rest, and you pick those. And pretty soon you got green ones in your bag. It's ridiculous. So I would, I would get some that were pretty red and ripe, and others I would get green ones.
So theoretically, if you were really skilled at it, which isn't easy.
It's not easy because the
You might
human
be able
mind messes with us.
Right.
And it seems much more efficient because you can, once you have them in a big pile, it's
They'll ripen.
easier. If they are going to keep ripening,
Right.
you can see more more quickly.
It works pretty well. It really works well. It's just a slow process, and I need help. But let's go on to the next vintage because I know
Before you finish your last sips, this pairs really nicely with the balsamic fig spread.
And while you're talking about that, why don't you tell us?
tell us about
what
this-
we've been
this
eating.
board
that we
All
just
kinds of good stuff
I asked
here.
Travis to make us up a simple board, and we've often paired the Lakehouse White with the Tilsit cheese, which is a really nice, mild cheese. So I said, if you want to just do Tilsit and crackers, we'll be happy. But of course, Travis came up with a whole bunch of wonderful things. So we had some Tilsit from Vermont Farmstead, we had some Harmon's cheddar, some 5 Generations cheddar, and then 2 different Waz spreads. We've got the triple Erlangen and the balsamic fig mostarda, which is the one that I think is pairing really nicely with this somehow. And then some Everyday Cafe mustard from Blackwater over in Kentucook. And then 3 different Fortuna's sausages. I believe you said it was the sopressata,
Yep.
the finocchiona, and then a Parmesan one, which is a newer one to our lineup that is
Ooh.
really good. That's this one there. And then,
This year?
yep. And then Jack's crackers, the white wine crackers. It's a nice mix of things.
Yeah, I thought all the various cheeses just really like this wine.
I think there's such a nice bright acidity to this wine.
Yeah.
That it helps.
Oh,
When-
it does go good with the mustard.
Yeah, there's something, I don't know, it
that
makes
acidity.
it, and I think the sweetness in that makes the wine taste sweeter in a
Well,
very good way.
It cuts the acidity, the sweetness, and,
Mhm.
and that's what you balance acidity
It
with, is
balances out.
sweetness.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
It
that's
surprised
nice.
me, but I think of Lakehouse White as being, I don't know, even though it's a very complex flavor, I think of it as not wanting to go with really, really strong flavored cheeses or meats generally. And the balsamic fig is a pretty strong flavor, but it works really nicely.
You know what I found the best way to use Lakehouse White?
Mussels.
Mussels.
We do have a
Yeah.
comment from Priscilla. She said, yeah, she's mentioned this in the past,
I was
but
kind of surprised you didn't show up with mussels.
Gerald.
we did a whole show on that before. So Priscilla says, yeah, she's mentioned in the past, but Newburyport has lots of wonderful beach plums, and
Oh yeah, she talked
wondering
about
if
beach plums before.
you wanted to
Different-
enjoy
different-
and
I know,
experiment
that's
with
a
those at
whole
some
other
point.
thing that I would love to explore, and I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet.
Also, perhaps
I would
ground
like to.
cherries. Ground
And,
cherries.
I wonder if we could get a whole group of club members down picking
Beach plums?
Certainly.
rose hips.
Rosa.
I need more rose hips. I always need more rose hips because they're such great.
I'm sure if you know when you're going, you
Well, I'm
put the
going to
date out
find out.
there. we
Emily is going out to the seacoast later this week, but it's going to come either at the end of next week, the very beginning of August, or maybe a little bit further on. So we have this whole train of changing fruit and changing ripening and all of this stuff. And up until this vintage, I was always just waiting, grabbing what I thought was a reasonable ratio and throwing them together. And at one point, both Bob and Chuck have contributed greatly to all of these wines. At one point, Bob said, Ken, have you ever thought of just making the 4 components of Lakehouse White and then blending them later on like you do with Hermitage to figure out exactly what ratios you want? I go, well, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So this is 2016 was the first time that I had made all 4 components separately and then blended them afterwards to have a little bit more control over the ratio of peaches to rhubarb to quince to rose hips.
This tastes more like current Lakehouse White, for sure. It's different, but it's
You know what it says to me? It says to me that this is
A little bit more
this
like first one,
wine
younger.
in a couple of years. It's you're back to that original character that I really like, only better. I think at the 10-year mark, this is going to be the better wine of the two.
Yeah, this is a little richer, a little fuller.
It's got more
Because
body.
I'm changing a bit in my approach.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing any sort of sur-lie process back there of stirring up the dead yeast as the wine matured. I was experimenting with different yeasts along the way, and I really honed in on this CY 3079, which is a white Burgundy strain of yeast, and I like using that and have used it ever since. So there are a number of different things happening here. What's surprising to me is even though I've tried somewhat radically different things each time, it's a similar wine
Oh, sure.
as we go through it.
But so far, of all the wines that you've shared, this I think is the best.
Yeah, I agree.
And potentially the best I think it's young. I think it's still really young. This has got another 3, 4, 5 years.
This one might worry me on whether or not it'll stand up,
Why?
if it'll taper off. It just seems a little fat, a little rich, like it doesn't have enough acidity behind it. And it was when I was really learning how to get fully ripe peaches, fully ripe rose hips. I used to get peaches in and wait till they were kind of squishy and then dump them in the fermenter. And then I started, well, I better look through every single peach, wait till it's squishy, and then freeze it so that I'd have a time frame of making sure I got them all right. But this is a bigger wine. I mean, every step of the way is to try to build something that's big and satisfying and rich, but not be disjointed, not be wrong. Because if you go for power before you know, it's like serving as hard as you can. It's gonna, go on the back fence. But if you learn how to get the stroke right, and then you slowly increase your power, then you can nail a serve.
A tennis analogy.
I'm doing a tennis analogy.
He was doing tennis balls earlier.
Well, it's because of Quince.
Playing tennis?
Come on. I wasn't doing music today. I started off with the tennis balls. There's a bigger story going on here at one of these balls. Trying to nuance that format.
I do think that the acidity holds up. I think this has an incredible body, which is remarkable because I know you
All
struggled
right,
for years.
2032, we're going to do this again.
32, and 20 years.
2032, 10 years. Because it's 2022 right now.
He has enough in the library to.
I pulled
Depends
that
on
out
how
of
much
a
you
full
drink
case.
between here and there.
One disappeared the other day, but
Some lucky person got to enjoy it.
This is really nice. Color-wise, it's very similar to the
the 13.
to the 13.
A little dark.
What do you think
it's a
is
little lighter.
affecting the color? Yeah, it's a little darker than this.
It's darker than what we currently are serving, but a little lighter than the.
So I think this wine is actually quite susceptible to heat or light, because my daughter's mother-in-law orders Lakehouse White. She lives down in Louisiana. She buys it even into the summer. And she's had wines end up coming almost brownish to her.
Oh,
And I haven't done an experiment of laying this out in the sun like I've done with Petite Blue, but I need to do that and to see how sensitive this is to temperature and or sunlight.
Yeah.
But it does seem to be fairly sensitive, so the ascorbic acid doesn't really protect it in that regard. And so the color variability of these wines has been pretty large.
I don't know if the bottle made a difference, but to me, this one had the appley flavor, but it felt like the appley flavor came from the oxidization of the peach part of the wine, whereas this one here is much more complete. There's no appliness to it, and all of the flavors are really nice and there, and it has a much better dynamic. But it's also in a bottle that doesn't have any sunlight. Although these have been in boxes.
These have been in our cellar. These
Yeah,
have been
probably-
in
probably
our
the bottle.
library. I think that one was a little compromised by the cork.
And the cork that cork came out really easy, and this
Interesting.
cork came out appropriately.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this one was slightly oxidized.
So before we go to the next two, which is going to be fun because they're going to be done. We should do these two side by side. So let's go back to the 19, to our current wine now for a minute, and just see where we've come. And then I'm going to tell you about.
Let's
the
get
next
another
one.
glass and have them side by side.
We've got 15 minutes left. Just a little time.
We got to move.
for
We
you.
got 3 more wines, Bob.
Oh boy.
Snack time. Snack break.
Which one is up? Yeah, good.
Sorry, I'll get the next one on deck. This one also, I felt like it needed to be opened up for a little bit because it blew off some
Some funk.
funk that was less than
Yeah.
appealing,
too.
really. But then once that was off, I don't know what those are, but it really was really.
I'm
really
so
good.
excited
Really
about
good.
the potential of New England fruit for wine. It just blows my mind every time. This is a 10-year-old bottle of wine made out of stuff that grows right here in New Hampshire.
You're just scratching the surface.
And I feel like I'm still just
You are
scratching the
just
surface.
scratching
It's
the
just
surface.
there's so much potential.
Absolutely. We have
Beach plums.
only
I got to
just
do
begun.
beach plums.
Beach plums. Thank you, Priscilla. Got a whole other thing.
What are we
together, you know?
comparing with this? Side
So
by
you
side.
said-
19
the-
and this side by side.
So
the
the
19
one that
has
we
this-
were just
okay.
finishing.
So you can
And
get rid of what you're
Get rid of
drinking
that.
right now. Get another shot of the 19, which is our current offering.
That's
That one right there. Yep.
Ooh, new fancy corks.
That's the new fancy cork.
Whoa.
Did it have pressure?
No.
are you just a
I
mess?
think it was just full of, I was just super, may have been overfilled.
It could have been overfilled. These were out. This is out of my cellar.
Oh, yours.
This isn't sold to the public.
Which
This
one do you
doesn't
want?
exist. That one.
Oh, that's for Chuck.
And this. So this is 19 side by side, but they look completely different. You better get rid of that one.
I hate
I know.
just to the queen.
Gary recommends beach plum jam. I
So
know,
this
they
is
make
so this is
jelly out
kind of
of
fun for you.
processed,
So these are both 2019.
Oh, is that possible?
They're both 2019.
Now you're confusing me.
One doesn't see the light of day. It's in my cellar. And it was the beginnings of a new experimentation. So up until 2017 or even 2018, Lakehouse White was done in stainless steel tank with light toast French oak staves suspended in the tank to provide some oak tannins and structure and oak aromas. This vintage 2019, I put quite a bit of it into French oak barrels and aged it in French oak barrels. And what you're tasting in the darker wine is 100% barrel aged Lakehouse White from 2019.
How long in a barrel?
I was like 7 months.
Neutral?
It was a blend. So there's semi-neutral and neutral.
And what was in the barrels before?
I'd have to look that up. A red wine.
Oh, a red wine.
I'm sure it was a red wine. Could have been a cider, because I put my hard cider in there as well.
Oh, it's an entirely different wine.
Well, it's funny that once you said that this had been in barrel, I immediately got some vanilla and that oaky tannin kind of smell. But I don't know whether it came because I expected that once those words came out of your mouth, or because I really actually smelled it.
Well, there's something very different in the aroma. I can't quite peg it.
I know,
don't
it's really-
see it as obviously as
I love this comparison. So
No, it smells
this
great.
wine is in our 2019.
Mhm.
So the 2019 is a blend. It's about 1/5 barrel aged wine and 4/5 stainless steel Lakehouse White. But before I put that blend all together, I bottled a couple cases to
just the
preserve the straight barrel.
Yeah.
So that I could compare and see which I liked better. Would I do 100% barrel aging or not?
Wow, they're so different. And they're both really excellent.
I like this.
There's things that I like about the barrel age, and there's things I like about the blend. Right?
So it's interesting. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I actually like the nose on the non-barrel aged better. I don't
On the
know
mostly
why.
stainless. Yeah.
But yet I like the taste of the barrel aged better.
You're probably a Scotch drinker, aren't you?
That's kind of what I'm kind of thinking, actually, that I'm not a Scotch drinker,
and for me,
but I like this. I can see how someone that is interested in that would enjoy this very much.
I like the complexity of the 19 that we assembled. I think the 100% barrel is a very interesting wine on its own, but I don't think it's as good as the blend.
You know what it
Overall.
feels like? It's trying too hard.
It's trying hard. That's what it is. It's trying.
It's trying too
wait a
hard.
minute,
That's
wait a
what it is.
minute. Give it 20 years.
Well,
That's
we
interesting
shall.
too.
Right.
That's what I would wonder. I have this
I think the
perception in my
fruit-
head
the
that
fruit
barrel
is
aged.
subdued in this right now. You get the fruit in this. You get this really nice peachy, fresh side.
Now, compared to the 16, the 13, and the 12, do you guys get more rosehip in this? You get more rose.
It's hard to know what
note.
rosehip is. Unless
Do you just smell
have
rose
it.
petals? Do you smell roses at all? Because I get the roses more in this.
I wish we had a sample of the rosehip wine sitting here next to us so that we could.
It doesn't
Or even
exist anymore.
rosehip wine, or even just roses. Or we're actually having some rose hips or something.
Yeah, the rugosa are in bloom right now. And I walk around in my yard in the evening and you can smell those. And the elderberry flowers are incredible.
This is really interesting to see the difference.
So this is how I like keep us with products to sell and craft and put all that stuff together, as well as learn and experiment.
Do you know what
This is how I.
You're gonna like this. You know what I get out of this? There's a hint, subtle hint of volatile acidity.
Oh, some VA. No, I don't get that.
No?
It could be there. I mean,
you know better than me, but
No. Everybody's got. See, that's
subtle.
I'm smelling rose hips on this, big time. That's what I love about this.
Well, that's why it would be helpful to have the rose hips here, because there's so many different components that go into this, and there's so many different things now between the different components.
If you go back to one of these, I don't think you get rose petals at all. And I'm finally
In the nose.
In the nose.
Yeah.
I'm finally getting rose petals in the nose, which is what I've been trying to do with rose hips forever.
Mhm.
And I'm just finally figuring out how to do that.
For me, these in the flavor profile, you get this sort of tomatoey kind of thing that I associate with rose hips, but you don't get any of the aromatics. And if it's in here, it's a rose, which is a really delicate aromatic.
It's very delicate.
And so I get a softness maybe in there, but I'm not tuned to smelling that. So you've been smelling the flowers and get that. So you have some frame of reference to attach to what you're getting out of here that I don't have.
I don't know. It's so hard. You know, one of these, I don't know if you guys know this out there in TV land, but one of the really great ways of clearing your nose to be able to smell is to smell your own skin. Smell your arm and then go back to the glass. And
Because it's the
seriously,
ultimate palate cleanser. It smells like
it resets your nose.
Oh,
That's
that
cool.
was
Actually,
interesting.
change.
It
It
Isn't that wild? It totally changes
That's
it.
really weird. Yeah.
You regain your reference.
Yeah.
This one
It's a
does smell
wild
so
thing, but
Because some of that, what I was calling the volatile acidity,
It was-
came out in this when I did that.
when you do that, it resets your nostrils. It's really wild. But I'll sit there and smell my wrist before I
So
go
what would
back
happen
in.
if I smelled your wrist and then
You might smell rose petals.
maybe?
It's a new blend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. This is a kind of a strange, interesting thing, but your nose is an amazing thing. And this just freaked me out the other day. My grandfather, who left this earth a long, long time ago, had a very distinct smell.
Yeah.
Which not a
Or when you would hug him
Just-
or
yeah,
be close
yeah,
to him,
yeah.
you would smell it.
It was who he
Yeah.
was.
Yeah,
It was
sure.
deep in him. It was
Oh, sure.
who he was.
He exuded it.
Yeah. And my uncle came to visit last week. And I
And he had it too?
gave my uncle a hug. And I was like, oh my
genetic.
God.
Yeah. Wow.
It's been 30 years since
Yeah.
I'd smelled that
And
smell.
And it's interesting because
And
I'm sure
I
you
knew instantly he was my grandfather's son.
Wow.
and I'm sure you couldn't really pinpoint what that smell is.
No,
like
I have
what's
no idea.
causing it or
Right.
something
I
like
just
that.
knew. I was like,
But then you
was
smell
it
it, you
good or
know
bad? It was
yeah.
just, this
Our
is
sense
the
of smell
smell.
is so powerful.
From 30 or 40 years ago.
I
It
think-
was instant.
More than any other sense, your sense of smell is so tied in that indescribable way, I think, to memories and places.
Oh,
We got a
absolutely.
soap a month or two ago, and as soon as it went in the shower and I used it the first time, it smelled like my grandparents' soap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and I
That's
don't know what it was, but yeah, it was just something
It
about that I
is-
could
it is.
tell.
Really fascinating.
Did you tell your uncle that he smelled like your grandfather?
No, I did not.
Good.
He's not watching.
You smell like
It's not,
didn't say it was a bad smell.
It's not a bad smell, a good smell. It's just, it was my grandfather. It was clear he was from that
Right.
chain of genes.
Yeah, that's what it is too.
All right, we've got 5 minutes for the last one.
All right, so
and
this next bottle-
Closing remarks.
It's a bit of a tease, everybody. It will be available, but this is the 2020 vintage that will be coming out as soon as the 2019 is done, probably in the spring release. So this is now taking this barrel aging component and the stainless steel component and the rose hip ripening format and still the conventional, well, a little bit more than conventional, the Amish raised Pennsylvania peaches.
It's another much
So
darker
this is
one.
my most recent, well, it's not the most recent, the 21 is downstairs in barrel and tank,
So,
but this is 2020 now.
just to leave the last pairing, the barrel aged by itself is not the answer.
I agree. Thank you.
And
I agree.
it's interesting. It brings some new and fresh ideas to the subject,
But it's not right.
but it wasn't as good as the one that I was comparing it with. And it sounds like to me that this rendition is an exploration of those two variations coming together.
Correct.
So this has a little
So
more
amazing.
barrel.
The process.
Yeah.
This is a little more barrel than the 19.
Correct. But not, I'm hoping not too much.
I like the nose. That's a good balance on the nose. That's an interest. That's really a fresh. There's some fruit in the nose. I don't know what fruit. It's
Rose
a
petals. We're getting rose petals.
But
fruitiness.
it is, again, I think it's the oak, again, it does make it
Floral.
much
Yeah.
kind of
good.
fuller and smoother, and it
I got
almost
Bob and
gets to
Chuck
that
smelling
like,
themselves
I
now.
know.
This is great.
See if I smell like grandfather in me.
Yeah.
No, he's not there.
Grandfather. That's terrible. Sorry.
So this is a 2020. So what we've done is gone from sort of early iterations, explorations, variabilities of fruit, same time scaling batches, scaling techniques, scaling environments, and this is the current one that's bottled is 2020.
so how does scale
Downstairs.
compare? So how much of the 2020 is there compared to the 2019?
It's about the same. We've got a good,
We've kind of
Yeah.
understand what the demand is
Yep.
for it, so we target that.
so this,
number
so
each
put it in
year.
perspective, this was like 4 cases. This is probably 10 cases. We jump all the way to 16. This is probably 50 cases. And then we get to 19. That's probably 140 cases. And now we're in the 180 case range.
Aroma-wise, and I haven't tasted this yet, but aroma-wise, this is your best one of all of them.
It's really well integrated already, I
Yes,
think,
yeah.
for 2020.
I haven't
this is
tasted
just,
it yet. So
this
just
is a baby.
Spot on aroma.
This is a baby, but I
It's-
really like the.
It's the peach.
I think it has.
Everybody gets peach. I never get peach in this. Everybody
I
gets peach.
totally
I never
I
smell
get
peach.
it
Totally get
if I think peach and then taste the wine and then think peach, I get peach.
I never
But
get
it's
peach.
not somehow what jumps out to
No.
me, which is interesting because
It's-
peach flavor in general is a very notable
Not
flavor
about
that I
that
know.
flavor, it's about the.
This is your best Lakehouse White ever. This is better than every one of these.
Thank you.
In my opinion,
I really
this
like
is
this.
better
I really
than
like it.
every one.
Thank you.
It's got,
Cheers.
it's cheers. This is, you nailed it.
Nice job, Pen.
And yet there's 3 or 4 renditions down the road that I know are going to be better, but this so far is the best one you've ever done. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's coming together in
It's-
the subtleties.
It's the subtleties
little
now.
subtleties.
I got the 90%. It's the
Nuance.
next little
Yeah.
bit that's really hard, and that's the nuance.
Yeah, but these had like areas of aggression, areas of too much or too little,
Mhm.
or lack of balance, and you don't
Mhm.
necessarily. And maybe a sommelier would be able to pick up the nuances and understand it and talk about it differently. Not me. I'm not that guy, but I enjoyed them as I went up the line and couldn't tell you why one maybe was enjoyed more than the other, or, to the degree that I can in my understanding when I finally taste this and I go, wow.
And that's really how people rate wines, wine experts. They have a palate, they have a nose for, and they have an experience base of trying wines. So when they come into a wine and they go, okay, so this is spot on balance, spot on mouthfeel, spot on acidity, spot on finish. That's what they're looking for. And they're it's a little lingering acidity or a little light on the aroma, or they're looking for that, and that knocks it down. They bring it down 92 points, or maybe 91, or whatever. They have a way of pulling that apart. But we're doing the same thing. We're just learning,
course.
trying to learn.
We don't have the same language or
the
the same
language,
tools.
the tools. But
It almost
I'm
has
really happy
like
about that.
a little.
I'm really happy about that. There's a lot of,
delicious.
all of these are, this is the most intensive wine that I make. This is the most difficult wine to craft. And it's finally, this is like, I got here with Red Scare maybe 3 years ago, and now I'm finally getting here with Lakehouse White. I really am happy about that. So I'm going through all of this rigmarole and finally starting to focus in. And now once I'm focused in, now I can really try to smooth it out and nuance those little tiny intricacies.
And I've always felt right from the beginning, this starting with the very first one.
Go back to that one. That'll be fun. Between.
This has been to me always one of your most amazing wines. What you've achieved with this wine is the most challenging of all of the
Thank you.
things
I really
that you
do.
have to work
Thank
with.
you.
When you're working with blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, honey, you got a great start just in the amazing fruit and flavors that come from that fruit. Not to diminish not to diminish Red Scare in any way, the complexities of that. And you've been working on that longer than Lakehouse White. You were working on that from 4 years before we even became a winery. So you got a leg up on all of those flavors. But the white wine, and as you know, we only have one wine that we really are comfortable with.
I got 2 more now that are
I know,
at my
I know.
early stages.
But because
They're
I think
coming out.
white wine is harder in what you're trying to do. I don't think it's necessarily harder in the grape world, but in what you're trying to achieve with the fruits that exist in New England, it's, like you said in the beginning, peach didn't work, rosehips didn't work. Each of these wines you tried on their own. So you've had to kind of figure out over many years, what is the right balance of yeast, fruit, aging, oak, all of these different things that I think makes this one of the most complex wines you make.
Yeah, thank you.
Agreed.
I think it is. It's really.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as a matter of value here at Hermit Woods, you look at the amount of effort that has gone
It's a
into
tremendous amount.
all of this. I mean, we're down there, we have club members, we have volunteers out there picking rose hips.
Yeah.
All of this is just as handcrafted as possibly can be. And
Yeah.
completely unique. There's nowhere else on earth you could possibly have something like this. Or try it.
Nowhere else on earth.
Really? No, I'm not kidding. about
Yeah, I don't think there's anything.
No, you're absolutely right.
Sure.
This is the only place that and likely only here, because this doesn't. I mean, you can get Lakehouse White ordered through the internet.
That's right.
But
Yeah, well, there's 1,600 bottles or whatever.
yeah,
I mean, it's like it's just not. Yeah.
well, what do we
it's
always
a
say?
simple thing.
You're going to try the best wines in the world when you go
Right,
to
yeah,
right where you
places
get 'em.
where they're
Yeah.
made.
Yeah, come here and try some Lakehouse White.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get some of that one. But they're all.
When is that
they're all-
released?
They're all excellent.
Probably
Probably
in
next spring.
probably the end of the year. It depends on when 19's gone.
Right.
We're
So-
down to, I don't know, 50 cases of the 19, so that won't last that long.
All right. Well, on that note, cheers, everybody.
Yeah.
Cheers.
End of the show.
Thank
Thanks,
you for
everyone.
joining us.
Thanks for joining
This
us.
is another wonderful Monday. This has been one of the most learning Mondays I've had in a long time. So thank you. And we will look forward to seeing you next Monday from the racetrack. And I'm going to leave it at that. From the racetrack.
That's going to be wild.
That's going to be
That
wild.
is going to be
So,
wild. Yeah.
cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Have a great evening.
Good night.
I don't know how that's going to work.